very excited. We're going to just get started because we have a lot to talk about, very little time. But my name is James Marin. I'm an integrative registered dietitian, environmental nutritionist.
I'm Dahlia Marin. I'm an integrative dietitian. I'm a certified gastrointestinal nutritionist, microbiome scientist, and we are both the co-founders of a practice and a company called Married to Health.
And so with Married to Health, and really today, we're going to try to get through a lot, but really our specialty has become what we like to call PBIFM&T. We're going to really get into who we are, what the problem is, what the solution is, some case studies, and how to connect with us. So we'll be explaining that.
And like so many that we've heard today, so many practitioners, so many who want to help other people. We got into this because we were our own messes to begin with. So I always say I was my very first patient, even before I became a dietitian 14 years ago. And my story, yes, is my own story, but it's not extremely unique. I hear the same story from patients, clients who I work with. One of the very first questions I always ask is, tell me your gut health story. I want to hear all about your diagnoses, injuries, illnesses, stress, diet changes, antibiotic use, anything that you really feel contributed to the way that you're feeling today. We all have our unique inputs, but usually it starts at some point in our lives. For some people, it's in utero. We used to think the maternal microbiome didn't affect us as babies. We used to say things like, oh, the uterus is a sterile environment. That's not true. So if your mom has gut issues going on when pregnant, you may very well inherit that microbiome. And so now we know what happens in utero, what happens when you're breastfeeding or being bottle fed, what happens in your adolescence and teenage years. That all starts to develop this footprint and this pathway that we all go down. And so I had very much my deep pathways that were created and formulated, beginning with, again, I was breastfed for just a few weeks. Lots of stress growing up. I'm a first generation American. I was a latchkey kid. Both my parents worked growing up. I ate a lot of, yes, Mediterranean food that was cultural to me, but also very acculturated in a lot of ultra processed, hyper processed foods. And so that led me from being kind of a vibrant young child to then being overweight, then obese, then having just a myriad of gut issues, whether that was relentless urinary tract infections, that was then ultimately at a young age as a teenager being diagnosed simultaneously all in one day. I remember I was having issues with hearing. I was like, oh, Mom, I kind of hear my blood loudly rush by my ears. Is that normal? And she was like, I don't think so, but let's go to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And so he took a look at my ear, nose, and throat to determine that they were all normal. But he said, right when you walked in, I noticed you had a huge goiter. So my thyroid was inflamed. He recommended that I go to an endocrinologist who performed very thorough blood work for the first time in my life. I was not shy at the doctors. I was at the doctor frequently because I was always sick, and I would just, 90s kid, pill for every ill. I would get my antibiotics and be sent on my way, but at the endocrinologist, I was thoroughly diagnosed and thoroughly assessed, and left that day being told I was pre-diabetic. I had polycystic ovarian syndrome. I had an autoimmune thyroid condition called Hashimoto's. I had high cholesterol, fatty liver, and I was given 3 prescriptions and was told, good luck, take these medications and come back, and that's it. So of course I left shocked and devastated, knowing that I had seen this story play out before with family members and others who I knew, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it. So of course, you don't get to those diagnoses by having the most unbelievable lifestyle, the most healthful lifestyle, and I certainly did not. But doing the same things you were doing before and just adding medication on top is not going to make you feel any better. If anything, now you have medication side effects. So that's when I resolved to find more answers for myself. I just started reading more about nutrition for myself. At that time, I was an early college student studying psychology, and then realized, hey, I'm actually very interested in the psychology of eating and how I ate myself into a lot of these issues, and how now they're affecting me and other parts of me, like my microbiome, which at that time I really wasn't aware of. So that is then where my story kind of converges with James, where we met. We were both studying dietetics at that time. I decided I'm going to study nutrition. Psychology is interesting, love it, cool concept, but I really want to learn the psychology behind eating and the psychology of nutrition. And so that's where we met. And we were both on our own respective journeys. And then it really wasn't until James and I started dating that he pointed out to me, hey, do you notice that every time we eat, you say you have a stomach ache? And I was like, oh no, but that's really embarrassing. So I started to really understand, okay, something deeper is going on, right? I don't just have an autoimmune condition. I don't just have metabolic disease. I don't just have these significant mood swings and uncomfortable menstrual cycles. There's something deeper. There's very much a connecting thread between all of these things, and I wanted to figure it out. So, becoming a dietitian, very much wanting to live that heal with each meal lifestyle, as we say, and use nutrition to heal, but had some imposter syndrome. So it took some time to find more information, more answers, and I'll be sharing more of that today with you all. So it's been a journey, but through it all, we have created something that we're really proud of and we really are grateful for.
And through that, yeah, so Dahlia being a template, we did create our own private practice. Over the years, we've become more integrative. We've added on quite the team of dietitians who have a specialty in integrative health. And mainly our specialties are for women. I see all the men pretty much, and some overlap. And then gut health for sure, because we do believe gut is the nexus, not just of all health, human health, but all health on the planet, which is why we extended into our local regenerative farm, and we're doing regenerative farm events with doctors, chefs, dietitians, and so much more. And so this statement is very much true just based on the research. So a lot of what we do is evidence-based. However, we're not just those that we need evidence to see how many sips of water we need. We need evidence. What's the evidence of how much we should be breathing? Obviously, there's some logic here as well, but a lot of great evidence has yet to be discovered, or I want to say bring to the mainstream. So when we look at the evidence, we're seeing a gut everything connection, and really the microbiome research has exploded in the last 15 years. Not too long ago, we remember being in practice and we were quacks. We were those weird dietitians in our field because we believed in the gut microbiome. Still to this day, many gastros do not believe what you eat matters when it comes to IBD, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, IBS, and we'll get into some of that. But there is a gut everything connection. So we do live in a world that makes it increasingly harder to protect the gut, as you all know. And this is where you can go into IBS a bit.
And so we know, yes, all these different inputs that we saw on that last slide add up. So whether it is psychological factors, it is changes in the environment, whether that is you physically immigrating, whether that is environmental pollutants and toxins, we all have genetic predispositions, and then we can have changes in our own anatomy and physiology. And if you have a significant number of changes, you might find that your bowel habits are changing, your symptoms are changing. Maybe you're a little bit more gassy, bloated, uncomfortable. And so we can then put those symptoms under this umbrella of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I'm sorry, I like to say IBS is BS. I think it's a BS diagnosis. It's kind of like, hey, we did some testing, and I used to work in a gastroenterology office, so I know their kind of routine is we're gonna do some blood work. We're gonna see if you have celiac disease. Okay, cross that one out. If you don't have that, let's scope you. Let's make sure you don't have IBD, Crohn's, or ulcerative colitis. Cross that one out. If we can't find anything else, any carbohydrate malabsorption, your bowels are just irritable. Just deal with them and we'll see you later.
It's gastro speak for, I don't really know what's going on. So you have IBS.
Absolutely. They're like, I don't know, your bowel movements are changing, you're uncomfortable. I don't know why, you just have IBS. So we now know there are different categories of influences to irritable bowel syndrome. We have, yes, larger bodies like the American College of Gastroenterology or the American Gastroenterology Association, and now they're even starting to recognize some of these things. But we at Married to Health really like to simplify them and call them the 4 M's of gut health, where they involve these different inputs. Microbes, or the bugs. I like to say the bugs that live in your gut. Movement, the way that your gut is moving. It should have a very specific paced rhythm and that shouldn't be too fast nor too slow. You have these beautiful membranes that make up your gut that we're going to talk more about. And then you have your mind, that mind-gut connection. And so if all the things here that you see on this side of the screen are going well, you're sleeping well, you're pooping well, you're having regular time-restricted eating, you're fasting overnight at least 12 to 14 hours, you're interval eating where you're not just grazing all day long and not giving your gut any breaks in between, you have healthy neurotransmitter production, so you have pretty balanced mental health, healthy hormone production, your 4Ms are going to be moving in a positive direction, right? You'll see those outcomes on the top. You really don't have any discomfort. You're not bothered by different meals. You don't have gut mental disconnection. You're having regular bowel movements. But when one or all of the 4Ms become dysregulated, maybe from some of those things on the side, maybe from things outside of that, you might start experiencing more frequent symptoms that are here on the bottom. I mean, when we're talking about bloating, we'll get into this a little bit more, but bloating is not a normal thing because bloating is a sensation. You might be distended after eating, right? Especially if you're eating something a little bit heavier, like a fried food. You might distend a little bit and have that physical appearance of distension, but you really shouldn't be uncomfortable. You shouldn't have excessive amounts of gas. It's normal to pass some gas up to 15 to, they say, about 23 times a day. But if it's in excess of that, if it's very foul, if you're having motility that is very fast or very slow, if you're frequently nauseated, you have acid reflux or indigestion, if you eat a few bites and feel full or satiated, you have food intolerances or food allergies, there could be something awry. So with these 4Ms, it's really important to start identifying where are things off and what can I start to intervene on. It can be overwhelming if you think, okay, all my 4Ms need some TLC. Where do I start? It's so important to try to identify what is off and then where is a good place to start. So with proper testing and the right care team, we're going to get into some ways to test, but that can tell us more about your microbes. And if you're in what's supposed to be eubiosis or microbe balance, or if you're in dysbiosis, where they're in disarray, you have way too many of certain microbes that cause inflammation, excessive production of gas, and we know that this can happen for many different reasons. For a lot of us, again, especially those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, lots of antibiotic use. It was like, why would you go to the doctor? What is a well check? When you're sick, go to the doctor, you get your antibiotics. So a lot of us had our fair share and several other people's fair share of antibiotics. It could be exposure to things like pesticides, gums and emulsifiers that are in ultra-processed foods. It could be stress or even issues with your motility that can offset your microbes. So we'll get into what we want to do if that's the case. It could be your movement or your motility. And I will say, for most people with gut issues, this is their first M that we want to address, is their motility. Because if you are gassy, bloated, if you have reflux, if you feel early satiety, you are probably not fully emptying. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They say, oh no, I'm not constipated, I poop every day. You can still be constipated. You might not be fully emptying, so you still would be considered constipated. Because if you are retaining anything that your body was trying to get rid of, that will make you bloated and gassy and feel full and really slow everything down. Our stomach, our colon, they have a very strong communication signal, your gastrocolic reflex. And so if you are constantly full in your colon, your brain will signal your stomach to slow down. It'll kind of say, hey, I can't even deal with what's in there. Don't add anything in addition to this.
It's right after lunch. We put a nice survey by the toilet. So if you're sitting there, please fill it out. I'm just kidding.
Oh no, the dad jokes have started. But we hope you all are having good motility. If you're not, you really want to figure out why. Why am I not fully emptying, or why am I only going a few days a week? Is there something going on with that bowl of muscles that I have called the pelvic floor? Are some of those muscles off? Is it maybe scar tissue or adhesion? Are any of the nerves or fascia that connect the muscles and nerves together off? Is it my circadian rhythm? Maybe I'm not sleeping well, or I'm not sleeping in a regular rhythm, or it's my nervous system that is in dysfunction, and that is sending SOS signals to my gut. So important to consider those first two M's and then the other two.
So the third M, membranes, my favorite. And we can think of membranes. We have this really thick mucosal layer that maybe some of you know about, some of you don't know about, but It's a mucosal layer that's very thick where our actual epithelial gut lining is very thin. So really this mucosal layer is key. You can think of it, I like to think of our inner ecosystem like our outer ecosystems, right? So we think of the Great Barrier Reef, this beautiful coral system where in it, in the case of the gut, we have what's called mucolytic microbes, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, archaea, all these beautiful microbes living in our gut. And you can think of it like an assembly line. This is just a quick analogy we like to use where the workers are the microbes, the structure is that beautiful coral, or in this case, the membrane, and then we're making things. We're making postbiotics. We've seen a lot of products here with postbiotics. We are constantly making postbiotics. We think of, anyone heard of short chain fatty acids? Right? Okay, so there's short chain fatty acids, there's proteins, there's antioxidants. We are making a ton of products here, but what happens if things are not going well? Our machinery's breaking down. A lot of our workers are calling out sick, and therefore those products are not getting made. And so what ends up happening is this breakdown of the mucosal layer, and guess what? Guess what the mucosal layer is made out of? Anyone think of a macro this mucosal layer is made out of? If anyone's brave enough to guess? Carbohydrates. So when we're on a low carbohydrate diet, or we're on a keto diet, or we're on a carnivore diet, and yes, I'm calling those out, guess what those mucolytic bacteria like to eat? Your actual mucus. They start to eat you. And so we see this in studies, a breakdown of this mucus barrier, and that's where we get to something called gut hyperpermeability, aka leaky gut, which is a more popular term, which I think a lot of doctors and researchers cringe at, but it's a nice term to really express what's happening, a leakiness and breakdown of your gut epithelia. And really this activates the immune system. We can get all into that. This talk can be 4 hours long, but anyway, you start to also get to key areas in the gut where you absorb and also make nutrients. And so when this is happening, you are losing out on both the absorption of the nutrients, as well as, like we said in this product line, the production of things like B vitamins and antioxidants and key protein and enzymes. Enzymes are huge. And so when you're losing enzymes, you start to get food intolerances. You start to become intolerant to FODMAPs and histamines and sulfur, and the list goes on, and you see this horrible snowball start to happen just from these M's, right? Now I can't eat this food, now I can't eat that food. I took a food sensitivity test and I'm sensitive to all these other foods, and it keeps going and going and going. And so I'll stop there.
And one thing that I like to really educate people on is people have seen perhaps pictures of what a liver or a heart looks like. That is a dense muscular organ. Your gut is not like that. It is paper mache. When James talked about the gut epithelia, it's thinner than our external skin. So our gut skin is extremely thin, and it handles a lot inside of it. It handles stomach acid and bile acid and all the food and your hormones and environmental toxins. So to put that all into a system of paper mache, you do really want to make sure you keep your mucus intact, because that's really what's protecting you from your immune system reacting and responding. That's really protecting all those nerves that are in and around your gut. We always talk about the spinal cord and how it has a lot of nerves. Your gut has 5 times more nerves than the spinal cord. And so it's so important to blunt the burden that those nerves feel and what they are not only intaking, but outputting.
Okay, this program is not for you if you're looking for a quick fix and you're not willing to put in the work. We have spent years and years creating a program that actually helps you get to the root of gut dysbiosis like SIBO and IBS, but it is not for you if you're looking to get better in just 1 week and something very, very quick. We have made it simple, affordable, and go at your own pace, but you still will be the one putting in the work to get better and truly overcome your SIBO and IBS. Take advantage of the current sale price for the Good Gut SIBO IBS program because it will be ending soon.
Because that lining of the small intestine is where we make over 60% of our digestive enzymes as well. I know we heard before our saliva makes enzymes, but really our saliva makes probably 10% of our enzymes, really just to break down carbohydrates. That's why sometimes you can suck on something starchy and it dissolves in your mouth. Little bit of fat, but really for protein breakdown, majority of fat breakdown, additional carbohydrate breakdown, that happens in the lining of your small intestine. So if it's damaged, it's not just food that we can't break down, it's other things as well. So now we're really starting to see other enzymes that we're struggling to break down. Who here has recently been hearing about histamines, mast cells, POTS,
Raise your hand.
dysautonomia. If these are terms, we're starting to have more and more people talk about these things. And again, it goes back to the gut. So when James mentioned there is a gut everything connection, there is a gut histamine connection. Before we used to just think, oh yeah, that person with histamine intolerance, they just have allergies, right? Spring, fall, their itchy eyes, watery nose, take some Zyrtec, you're fine. Now we're understanding there are a lot more GI symptoms and just systemic symptoms that can come from not properly breaking down histamine because you have that intestinal hyperpermeability, because you're not making those enzymes that break down this natural immune chemical. So that DAO, that diamine oxidase that's supposed to also largely be produced in the small intestine, doesn't get produced. You're still having as much histamine exposure, whether that's from food we eat, environmental histamine exposure, hormones like estrogen release histamine into our system, adrenaline releases histamine in our system, and that can bind to histamine receptors that we have top to bottom. So whether that's around your brain, around your respiratory system, your heart, your gut, your skin, that can result in a lot of these different symptoms that people don't always equate with the gut or with histamine.
So the migraine, the postnasal drip, the eczema, the list goes on, even tachycardia, you're having irregular heartbeat and heart racing. All of this is connected to histamines, which is connected to your gut, which is why we say the gut is the nexus of all health on the planet, truly.
So all of these different issues that can be going on with your 4Ms, again, just to review them, you have your microbes, your motility, your membranes, and your mind, which we didn't really talk about too significantly, but the two really do connect very, very strongly. You have your enteric nervous system, which is all those nerves I was talking about in your gut, and your central nervous system in your brain, and the two are intertwined by way of different nerves. One of them is called the vagus nerve. You all might have heard of the vagus nerve. Everyone's talking about the vagus nerve now, but it's such an important nerve that connects the gut and the brain, so that way you can use different tools to stimulate your vagus nerve or stimulate that area of your brain that the vagus nerve plugs into, called your limbic system. That dictates whether you go into that active sympathetic state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, or if you're chill, you're able to be more parasympathetic and you can effectively rest and digest and feed and breed. But like we mentioned, when any of your 4Ms, or for some people, all of their 4Ms are off, it can result in, again, IBS. We now know it's not just IBS, but we can kind of name different things and say what is causing it. So now we know not all IBS is SIBO, but all SIBO is IBS. So SIBO is a condition known as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where some of those microbes that are really just supposed to live in the colon, or largely supposed to live in the colon or large intestine, have made their way up into the small intestine, where really we're not supposed to have a lot of microbes. We only have about 10% or less of our microbes living in our small intestine. You don't want too many bacteria and other microbes living there, because their job is to ferment things, and that's not what you want happening in your small intestine. You want to be digesting and absorbing your nutrients. Whatever you can't do there, you want to leave to the colon and to the microbes, so they get to feed off of some of those things that don't get digested and absorbed. They get to condense it all, help create waste, and help excrete it. But when that's going awry, you can have overgrowth either in the small intestine or the large intestine. So for all intents and purposes of this presentation, we're just going to call it all SIBO, but it's not all necessarily in the small intestine. Could be in the small or large intestine. And there's different types of bugs that can be overgrown. So there could be different bugs that make different gases that cause different symptoms. But there's so much overlap between IBS symptoms and this microbial overgrowth, because any microbial overgrowth is IBS, but not all IBS is from microbial overgrowth. So if you know someone, or if you yourself are seeing mucus in your stool, or you're constantly belching, or you feel like you're never having a solid stool, or you're like, I can't pass gas around other people, it would clear a room, that might indicate something is going awry with your microbes, and you might have some microbial overgrowth or overabundance. And so We know, again, there's very specific types of bacteria and other microbes. We're not going to bore you. We're science nerds, but that doesn't mean that all of you are. We know some of you in this room might be, but this could be different types of bugs living in your gut, whether it's candida and other types of fungi. It could be what are called SRBs, sulfate-reducing bacteria, that make this type of gas called hydrogen sulfide gas that smells like rotten eggs. We do know females are more likely to have that type of gas. We do have more of those sulfate reducers in our guts than men. It could be methane, and those who have methane overabundance, they might have gas or stool that smells like a cow or a petting zoo or an outhouse. We all have some of these methanogens living on our intestines, but we shouldn't have too many. Or it could be overabundance of hydrogen producers, and that creates more of that loose stool and rapid motility.
I want to give the quick analogy of the outside ecology, right? Where we know we have many types of different forests, right? But the forests in Canada are not the forests we have here in Sequoia, or not the forests we have in South America. And so, yes, they're forests, but they're different ecosystems with different species. And so it's kind of what's happening here is we can have many reasons of deforestation. And what matters is the reason and the location. And that's what we're seeing in our own body. Our own body mirrors the outside ecosystem. The outside ecosystem mirrors our inner ecosystem, which is our gut. And so that's what we see, where we have a broad picture of deforestation, but as we dig deeper, we have issues with bark beetles, we have human issues with cutting down the trees, we have other issues with moisture and climate, and so there's lots of different variations with that.
And we also now know IBD is really just more involved IBS. So for those who have Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, we now know it's really a microbiome and a microbe issue. And it also becomes a membrane issue because of all the inflammation that goes there. But we know even 30% of those who put their IBD into remission, where maybe on a scope or a stool test, they don't have any indication of disease, they can still have IBS symptoms because, again, you still want to address their microbes and their mucus and their barriers as well.
And so we really get into this other analogy of gut debt. And this is where you can have a friend who eats nachos and pizza and burgers all the time. And it's usually males, unfortunately. I know, shout out to the only other male here. Okay, two. Sorry, there we go. And then, but we see this. And so what happens is, I think someone was touching on this before, but it's really what's called a transgenerational effect, where when you think about it, I'm gonna try to get through this quickly, but the idea is you were there with your grandmother. So when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, 50% of your DNA, because women have all the eggs they will ever have, even in the fetal stage, you were there. 50% of your genome was there. So if grandma was exposed to pesticides or smoking or not eating well, we know IBS is transferable through the gut microbiome. You were there. So just like in real life, we can either come into a family of debt or we can come into a family with a trust fund. The same is true with our health. We can have health debt or a health trust fund. And this is where you're like, I'm doing everything right. I'm eating all the plants or I'm taking all the supplements and I'm still having this IBS. Whereas someone else is eating all the burgers and fast food and they're like, I'm fine, no big deal. And so we really try to help you not run from the debt, but face the debt head on. What's happening in society is we're saying, no, these plants are bad, anti-nutrients, oxalates, lectins, salicylates. How many of you have heard of these things at all? They're getting more popular on social media. These things are food for your microbes. And so if we go back to that factory line picture, we don't have to go back there, but your healthy microbes break these things down. They use them. They create postbiotics from these anti-nutrients. We really need a new term for that. But they're not anti-nutrients. They're just not nutrients for us. They're nutrients for our microbes. But if our microbes aren't there, we run into problems. It's not to say demonize these things. It's to say, let's face these issues head on and properly. So this is where we help our patients heal with each meal, not fear with each meal, right? Not like dread with each meal. And so, but really it becomes this chasm, right? Where we're saying there's many of you out there who are eating a low fiber diet, either by choice or not knowing it. And we're saying, no, eat more fiber, but it feels like, ooh, when I do, I get a stomach ache. Like how the heck am I gonna do this?
In the last couple of years, who here has heard of eat 30 plants per week, count your plant points, try to get 30 different plants, right? That's been a trend. But you might be thinking, okay, I eat like 2 plants and I have the worst stomach ache and I'm so bloated with that. How on earth do you expect me to get to 30?
And I was a blue shirt guy and Dahlia was the red.
Yeah, I was like, that's gonna be a challenge.
For sure.
So you might you yourself be trying to fiber max. You're like, okay, I'm doing the chia water, I'm doing the 30 plants, and what the heck, I feel worse. My symptoms are even worse. Or I didn't have these symptoms because I really wasn't eating fiber, and now they're here. So what can you do? You need the right team. You definitely need to understand what is going on and have a customized approach to understand your M's and understand what you're dealing with. And we know people come to us on both sides of the spectrum. They're like, my care team sucks, or I don't have a care team. No one's tested me for anything, and I'm just guessing. I'm in the dark. Or they're like, hey, I've spent 10 grand on functional testing and no one has helped me feel better. What do I do? So we really like to meet people in the middle. The middle is a nice place, I always say. I really like the gray in the middle. It's a cute and comfortable place to be, and so we like to just get the most pertinent information that we need. And really, somebody who's great at what they do, they shouldn't need a bunch of testing. Testing is really just going to tell you how much you have of something. It's not necessarily, the right person will know what you have going on. This will just kind of quantify what you have. So there's different types of testing. If we do suspect there's microbial overgrowth, we can order a breath test to understand which of those gases are being produced. Maybe your symptoms started after you got food poisoning. So there's actually blood tests that can tell us that, if you have any antibodies to food poisoning and what we can do about them. We know we can order things like organic acid testing to see if you have fungal overgrowth, because really that's how you test for that. These metabolites are byproducts. And then that helps us understand how to treat it. There's functional stool tests out there. There's urine hormone tests. So lots of testing out there. And it's not always necessary to do all of it, but with the right tools, the right team, you can really identify, okay, how am I going to address my 4Ms? What is that going to look like? And first and foremost, we like to encourage people, yes, heal with each meal. We're all about food as medicine as dietitians, but it's so important to feel with each meal and really understand how your nervous system is playing into things. It's really difficult to heal a body that you hate, you resent, you fear. So it is so important to understand your relationship with food first and foremost, and any boundaries that you might need with different foods. I always say, when you buy a food and you bring it into your home, it's a temporary roommate. So who are you inviting to live with you? Are you inviting something or someone in that you don't have a healthy relationship with and you should not be seeing every day, right? We're in the holidays, so we know it now. We're like, okay, I'm gonna see Aunt Sue and she's crazy, but that's okay. I only am gonna see her twice a year. I can handle her, but I'm not gonna invite Aunt Sue to stay at my house, right? She's gonna create some chaos with me. So ask yourself, who am I inviting into my house? And should I be inviting them that frequently? Or should we have a little bit more distance between us? I'm just gonna see them at a restaurant, or I'm gonna see them on the holidays. And that's a peaceful relationship for us there. So really you wanna feel with each meal. And then we go into how you heal with each meal with what we like to call that PBI FMNT. It's basically plant-based integrative functional medical nutrition therapy. And really when you say plant-based, it's just eating more plants. So trying to eat at least or up to 80+% plants in your diet. Whatever else you want to eat in addition to that, that's your prerogative. But really we want to help everyone eat more plants, because that gut debt is really why people struggle to eat the plants. It's not the plants, it's your gut.
And this is important to say, we really started with plants because they were the hardest, and because so many people out there, a lot of SIBO programs were already out there, and they're telling you eat more chicken and eat more steak and eat more of this. We're like, no, well, we know plants are good. How many of you have heard of FODMAPs? FODMAPs, yeah. So these are our fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyls. It's an acronym. These are carbohydrates. These are healthy foods to eat. So we wanted to develop a way to do it with plants, not say avoid plants. So we wanted to start at the hardest, highest level, and then our patients customize from there. You can obviously add animal products, but we take them down protocol solutions that are tailored to their needs, utilizing plants as well as some animals if they like, or they can even do it 100% plant-based and get through this in a definitive way, for sure.
But really understanding what you have going on before trying to change your diet is so important, because I have so many patients who come to me and they're like, I did the low FODMAP diet and it really didn't help that much. Or I've done a candida diet and I don't feel any better. I still have all those candida symptoms. I've done some of these elimination diets, or I've been gluten-free, dairy-free, and I'm not feeling significantly better. And sometimes that's not what they need. Sometimes it's evident they need a low sulfur diet. So maybe that's what we do for a period of time.
And going back to that tree analogy really quickly, it's like you're trying to get rid of the bark beetle when you don't have bark beetles. It's another cause of deforestation. So you're treating for bark beetles and you're like, what the heck is happening? That's not the cause of your deforestation. So it's identifying, why are my trees being cut down? And then you can properly solve it.
And yeah, even with that gut debt analogy, avoiding these foods long-term also is kind of like, hey, I got myself deep into debt. Let me just change my email. I'm going to change my phone number and I'm going to move. So I'm just not getting those notices that I'm in debt anymore. Are you out of debt at that point just because you're not getting the notices?
Yes, of course.
No, absolutely not, right? You're going to go try to buy a car or go finance a house and your credit sucks. You're not going to be able to qualify for those things. So that's really what these prolonged elimination diets are like. You're just turning off the signals. You're not making anything better. You're not getting yourself out of that debt. You need a real sustainable, healthy plan for what you actually need. So that's where some of these diets can help temporarily, but these are not meant to be a way of life. It is not sustainable or recommended to live on a low FODMAP diet, or on a low histamine diet, or on a low sulfur diet, or on a low candida diet. These are things that we want to eventually balance the M's out for and then reintroduce those things. And so like James was mentioning, that's what we do with our patients and our clients. We do reverse elimination diets, so that way they are able to identify the problem, eat for the problem, heal with each meal, and then add back food by food and really tolerate that food. Because if you have a really healthy gut and all 4 M's are functioning well, you should be able to really eat anything you want, and nothing should double you over in pain. Nothing should give you joint pain, brain fog, fatigue, significant bloating. Sure, there are foods that are probably not as nutritious. We all know ultra-processed foods are not great for us, but you should be able to eat those once in a while without having tremendous pain or discomfort. So if you're finding not only is it ultra-processed foods, but even just whole nutritious foods, whether they're cooked or blended or in a smoothie form, any of them that you can't tolerate, your gut really needs help. So I wanted to share a case study. This was one of my recent patients that I've been working with the last few months, and she has done every elimination diet you can think of out there. You see in bold, she's had a lot of things happen that have affected her M's. And I told her right off the bat, I was like, look, you've been dealing with this, you said, since the day you were born. So it's not gonna be an overnight fix that you're gonna feel better. But little by little, we're gonna start working on your M's, and we worked on them one at a time. She actually came to me water fasting. She was on a supervised medical water fast. And so we did a stool test, and I had already known. I was like, okay, that's not a good idea for you. But her stool test confirmed she not only had a severely fractured gut barrier, her skin, she had pretty much no mucus. She had overgrowth of a lot of inflammatory and insidious bacteria, and then she had low amounts of helpful probiotic bacteria. So I was like, please don't ever do a water fast again. We really need to rebuild and refeed, not starve. You are starved enough. You've been starved enough with all the elimination diets that you've been on. We found out that she had an enzyme deficiency, so we put her on digestive enzymes. We had her go on motility support. We've done a few different rounds of herbs, of removing who we don't want there. We did some specific probiotics per her stool test to add who we do want there. And she messaged me very recently, and she said, I'm not exaggerating, this is truly the best I've ever felt in my entire life. I'm very hopeful.
There are lots of gut powders and gut supplements out there, but hopefully this quick analogy will help you choose the right one. When it comes to gut supplements and gut powders, think of your gut as a garden. And in this garden, you can plant seed, you can transplant plants, or you can also facilitate healthy soil so things will naturally grow. What we opt for and what we recommend on a daily basis when it comes to taking a gut supplement is to opt for the supplement that will help the soil be healthy. This is essentially a compost for the gut. This helps ensure your gut soil is healthy, your microbiome is thriving with your own personalized fingerprint in your gut microbiome. If you're taking probiotics and not sure what they do, it's like transplanting plants that belong in tropical South America to Alaska. Sure, you can do it, you can spend money on it and time on it, but it won't last long. Instead, ensure that your soil in your gut, which is the gut structure and gut function that you uniquely have, is ready to facilitate healthy seeds, healthy probiotics coming from your environment, from your food, and so on. That is why we formulated Gut Nurture.
So always, always, always just so great when you get to hear those things and not just hear them from others, but live them yourself. I am case study number 2. I know I started this presentation with my whole gut health story and how I was Hot Mess Express to begin with. And now with the right tools for my M's, I'm thriving. I can eat whatever. I can have gluten. I can have high-fat meals when I want to. I don't choose to do that all the time, but if I choose to, I know that I'm not going to miss out on life or be doubled over or, not be available for my daughter or my husband or my business or my patients. I know that I'm able to thrive after being able to heal with each meal.
And so some of the do's, just to summarize very quickly, customize this MNT, this medical nutrition therapy using the 4 M's, testing appropriately when needed. We're very conservative with testing. Customize probiotics. Again, probiotics can make things worse. So depending what type of overgrowth you have or dysbiosis you have, it can make things worse. So that's very, very important. That's where we see some patients who come to us on 12 or 24 different supplements and they're like, I don't feel any better. And actually maybe 50% of them are making things worse. So reverse elimination is key, where it's not just eliminate. That essentially is why you're seeing people on a carnivore or ancestral diet. Those are just extreme elimination diets for a long term. That is not the key. We're going to address a gut health story. So this is where we refer out to therapists, to pelvic floor PTs, to other practitioners. Emotional release. There's so much there. It's definitely, we touch on a lot of the physical, obviously, the nutrition, but it's mental, it's spiritual, it's emotional. There's so many other angles as well. So that's where we collaborate. That's where we optimize. I mean, there's so much to optimize, neurotransmitters, stress. So we get into a lot of that and then refer out. It's really hard for us to do everything, but we are mainly focused on the gut. But again, the gut is connected to everything. This is where you guys can connect with us. We're at Married to Health everywhere. We do have a podcast as well, the Good Gut Live podcast, and we've been on with T. Colin Campbell and through eCornell, and we've done different online groups. We have our own online program as well. You can find that through Married to Health. And we are a network with most PPO insurances as well. So that's really cool for our patients. So we'd like to have time. I think we have a little bit of time for Q&A if anyone has any questions, but
Yes.
What's the difference between, since there's contradicting information, pre and probiotic, and which is more beneficial?
Yeah, so I love analogies if you can't tell. So I think of a garden analogy, right? So the prebiotic is like the soil and the mulch. Anyone like to garden here? Compost? Okay, so you need healthy soil. That is the prebiotic. You can think of it, the prebiotics are what feed then the seed, which is the probiotic. And the term probiotic just means we've studied this specific microbe and we see it has a beneficial effect. A controversial take we have is there's no bad microbes. They're just in the wrong place in the wrong amount. So we take a very permaculture aspect. That's why we love, or I love regenerative farming. Dahlia loves it by association, I think. But concept in permaculture and regenerative farming is that there's no bad plant. So we like to call things weeds, and we develop herbicides to kill these weeds because they're bad plants. No, they're just in the wrong place in the wrong amount. So the same is true in our gut ecosystem. And so going back to this analogy, we plant the seed, which is the probiotic. The probiotic grows up nice and strong as long as it has that healthy soil, the prebiotics. It then starts to make a postbiotic, which is the fruit. And then with the fruit, the cycle begins all over again. Ideally, we take the compost from the fruit itself. Ideally, we're eating the fruit and defecating, and that goes back into the ecosystem, and the cycle begins again. Another point of this analogy I like to point out where it gets overlooked a lot is the idea of flowers and pollinators. Those are your hormones and neurotransmitters in this analogy. So every plant has a fruit flower, and a pollinator, and those are the neurotransmitters and hormones within our body that help this analogy. So I don't want to say one's in this ecosystem, they're both important, right? And I would say if anything, when you're eating the foods you need to eat, and that's why the reverse elimination is so important, you are seeding your gut. The very foods you eat come with the microbes to break it down to some extent. So microbes live within the tissue of the plant. microbes live within the root system of the plant. It's called the rhizosphere. And when that's all healthy, we are going to get those microbes. And we can amplify this by fermentation and other methods. But for the most part, if we're eating that diversity of plant foods, we're getting diversity of microbes. And a bonus that I love to geek out on is also food DNA. We tend to not think food has its own DNA, and we also get that and transfer that within our gut, which is really cool. That was just an answer to one question.
So it depends on the person. Like some people are on a low fiber diet and they might then prioritize the prebiotics for themselves. A lot of the times if you don't have the probiotics will kind of die off because they're like, I'm not getting fed here. I'm not going to thrive.
And they say
I just
later.
need to go. Yeah, so it really just depends. And that's also why sometimes you take a probiotic and you don't feel better. We have literally thousands of strains of different bacteria and other microbes in our gut, in our body. And so sometimes just taking a probiotic capsule that has 4, maybe those aren't the ones that you need. So maybe that's not why you felt better. Yes.
I have a question to piggyback on that. So do you advise having prebiotics and probiotics on a consistent basis, like every day, just like a multivitamin? Or is it something that you're doing, you're getting better, and then you're using food as your prebiotic and probiotic?
Yes, to both. So studies actually show that eating 4 to 6 servings of fermented food per day helps to build not only a more robust microbiome where you just have a wider variety of different bugs in your gut, but it fortifies your immune system because we heard 70 to 90% of our immune cells are found in our gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And then it gives you those probiotic strains already. So fermented foods are kind of like a pre and probiotic combination. That's called a synbiotic. But you do want to eat those fermented foods. And then we know diversity is the spice of life, but it's the key to our gut health as well. So changing up those fermented foods every once in a while. If you're like, okay, I was doing a lot of miso and kombucha, now let me maybe have sauerkraut and kimchi, or let me have some yogurt, or let me have some natto, or some of these other foods that also contain fermented strains, so that way you're just diversifying it. But that's where it also goes to, earlier we heard eat seasonally, because that also gives you different probiotics and prebiotics, like antioxidants. So it's doing both.
And just really quickly, we're our own fermenters. So that's what a healthy colon is for. We are fermenting the food. So when you're eating seasonally, like right now, persimmons are killer. We're eating lots of persimmons. My colon is fermenting persimmons. I know that's a little TMI, but it's true. And so ideally, you're eating, that's why we love plants. They are the ultimate symbiotic. They are giving you the prebiotic, the probiotic, and sometimes even a postbiotic when they're fermented, and it's the ultimate combo.
And we don't hate on supplements. Like I use supplements all the time. I'll recommend probiotics, but again, it's knowing the right ones that you need. Because so frequently I have people coming to me and they're like, I'm constipated and I'm taking this probiotic, and I'm like, that one is for diarrhea. It's going to make you more constipated. Or they're like, I have constipation and I'm taking this one, and it's like, okay, that's not the right one for you. So yes, use supplements, but use them judiciously and with the right guidance, so you know which ones are for you.
Or cut us off. I mean, I know we're maybe...
we can have diarrhea of the mouth if you let us. So.
Can you do one more question if anyone has more?
Yeah. Yes.
How important is the timing of eating certain nutrients at certain times?
Certain nutrients. Well, I would say, maybe I'll start generally. You can go in more depth maybe, but there's something called the migrating motor complex. And so it's very important to fast, but I think we've come up with a weird kind of version of fasting where fasting for me is sleep. So I am stop eating at 8 p.m. and I start eating maybe at 10 a.m. the next day. That is a beautiful fast. So my migrating motor complex is moving. I sleep deeper. I feel better. You can still get those ketones, and you're getting all the benefits of fasting, but it's not in the way you think, where it's like I have to water fast for 48 hours and I have to do these extreme mono meals that we see. So I would say that timing is way better than having to be like, okay, I can only eat fruits at this time of the day or proteins at this time of the day. I have yet to see really good evidence on that. And
like food combining.
Unfortunately, no one hurt me here or anything, but I know it's big in Ayurveda and a lot of that, but I have yet to see really strong evidence. I've yet, more importantly, even within the thousands and thousands of patients we've seen, have even good case studies to show that's been helpful in our patient population. Again, when we really hit on these foundational things that we've touched on, that relieves so much, and those things really don't matter. That answer your question. I mean, is that okay? So the gut, and let me just add, the gut was made to digest complex foods. A lot of foods in nature will have fats, proteins, carbohydrates, pectins, water, salts. I mean, the list goes on and on. So your gut is tailored to break all those things down and put them where they need to be.
And really, more importantly than something like food combining, I always like to tell my patients, go through just an optimal digestion checklist. Step number one rather is start with your brain. You start digesting in your brain. We have something called the cephalic phase. About 20 to 30% of our digestion happens before we even eat. It's when any of our senses engage with food. So smelling food, touching food, hearing food, seeing food, that's why we start salivating. That's why we start hearing our stomach grumbling. Our body is quite literally preparing for digestion. So we get a lot less of that now because we're like, okay, I just finished a meeting. Let me like gobble food up right now. I don't really get that cephalic phase. So start there. Start thinking about your food. Start preparing more of your food. Really engage your senses. And then, like we heard earlier this morning, chew your food. I don't know if 50 times is realistic because I don't think we all have hours a day to eat, but at least 20 times, or at least until it's mostly liquid in your mouth. So really chew your food. If you're seeing huge chunks of food in your stool, you're just not chewing. It's not that you don't have enough acid. It's not that you don't have any of those other things. You're just not chewing. So chew your food. Yes, sometimes people don't have enough stomach acid. So we know different conditions can affect your stomach acid levels. Hypothyroidism is one of them, other autoimmune conditions. If you need to acidify your stomach acid, if you feel like food is really heavy, you're burping after you eat, add acids. Take some apple cider vinegar, have some lemon water, have some lime juice, have acids or bitter foods with your meals so that way your stomach does its thing. We also then know after our stomach acid and the first few parts are robust, our pancreas is going to infuse enzymes, our gut lining is going to infuse enzymes, our gallbladder rather is going to squeeze out bile. So when you start at the top, the rest of it goes really well. So start there, with that checklist of like engage my senses, chew really well, add acid if I need, and the rest should go pretty well after that. Thanks so much. We love talking about guts and butts. So let us know if you guys have other questions. Thank you.